Welcome to another vlog. It has been a few days since my last one where I finished rereading all of my books in my series, and now I'm ready to actually dive into the fourth book, the draft that I just finished last month. If you're new here, my name is Dana, and under the name D.L. Pitchford, I publish unapologetically honest stories with real characters. And we're gonna read this draft that I wrote last month. I am very excited about this and anxious, especially since I just finished reading all of those books and they are, totally edited. And then there's this, which is like 4 drafts, but generally what I consider my second draft. The point is, this is really rough in comparison to the 3 books that I just reread. The writing will not be tight in the slightest, and there will definitely be quite a few small picture story things that need tweaked. That's mostly what I will be doing. I have my little notebook here, and I have the 1-page book plan that I put together a few months ago. And then I have a notebook to keep track of stuff. I wrote down a few big picture things that I know I already want to adjust in this. And then as I go through, I will be taking notes on each chapter and deciding what sort of things I need to make alterations to, what sort of things I want to expand. And I have a working list of other big picture things on my Google Drive already. So I'm not starting line edits yet. This is still developmental changes. At this point, I'm generally taking notes of all the things that I notice that need fixed or need improved. And then I'll put together a big list afterward so that I can work off of that list while working on the next draft. This is about the same length as all of the previous books are. This is 104,000 words. The longest book in the series is 98,000 words. So that's only a 6,000 word difference. It's not much because of how in-depth this process is. I will be taking so many notes, and yeah, that's a long process. Well, the wind really wants me to start, so let's get to it. Okay, I've got kitties on either side of me, apparently, because they're taking up the whole couch, almost. So I just read the first chapter. All in all, this is still really solid. I don't think anything in it stands out as something that needs even small adjustments. The kind of adjustments that I know it needs are descriptions need fleshed out. The interiority is generally pretty good in it, so I'm not really worried about that. There are a few things that I know I want to tweak because I changed something. I had this realization the other day that something I set up in book 3 doesn't actually fit with how it plays out in this draft. So I'll have to make a couple very, very minor changes. One of those is I have to change the wording of like 1 or 2 sentences in here. That will be quick and easy. I made a few notes on the text itself, and then I wrote down a couple things to my list of like character and location descriptions. Like in this, I specifically said that the tiles in the bathroom bathroom at their house are blue. And that's not something that ever got mentioned in book 3 or elsewhere. So if I'm going to mention that here, I need to make sure that if it gets mentioned ever again in this book, it stays the same color. So there were a couple things like that, like specific adjectives that I chose for describing people. I specifically described Prue's hair as being silky, which is not a term that I used for her hair in the past, so that needed to get written down. Overall, this is a pretty solid first chapter. I do have one main concern that is character related, but it is something that is overall connected to Billy's character arc in this and like Billy and Xander's relationship arc. So it does make sense. It just is a little bit in contradiction to things that happened in book 3. When Billy and Xander got together, they talked very specifically about how if they're going to actually do this, they have to be a team. They can't keep secrets from each other. And for the most part, they're doing that, but both of them have very specific things that they are struggling to open up about. With Xander, that is his family, and with Billy, it is what's happening in this first chapter. My main concern there is the first chapter is, at least for one of the storylines, this is the inciting incident. Starting with the inciting incident, which is something that causes Billy to act not out of character, but against the status quo. The status quo being them actually communicating pretty well and being dedicated to communicating. Even if Xander is still holding back stuff about his parents and his family and childhood and all of that stuff, he is still far more open with her than he has been in the 3 previous books. So my concern is that that status quo is not showing up. The two of them being more open with each other is not apparent in this first chapter. No matter how hard you try in a relationship, in any type of relationship, there will be communication issues. That is inevitable, but this first chapter does not show how much they are trying to communicate with each other, how much they are intentionally sharing with each other on either side. We immediately dive into the inciting incident, which is something that causes Billy to pull back and not communicate as well as she wants to. And when the inciting incident for the stuff with Xander's family happens in chapter 2, we're seeing his visceral reaction to something without it being established at all that he has generally gotten better about communicating that sort of stuff with her. It might be better if I put in another scene ahead of this that better establishes the open working dynamics of their relationship, even if it's just something that happens a little bit earlier in the day. This scene specifically takes place late at night. It's maybe 11 p.m., maybe a little earlier than that, not sure. Billy and Prue are together, and Xander and Jimmy are both at work. So it could easily fit in another scene ahead of this that's before Xander goes to work, and I would just need something to be happening in it. That's kind of where my head is at. That's what I'm thinking about right now. I really like this scene. It's a good scene, but I'm not sure it does what I need the very first scene in this book to do. So I'm going to keep reading, and we'll see how the rest of this goes. It is late, I don't know, maybe 11? Almost 11. I just finished reading through chapter 6, and I have a couple pages of notes. No really big changes to scenes or anything like that. Right now, the main thing that stands out is something about chapter 6 is off. It feels really out of place, like it doesn't fit in with the stuff around it. Chapter 5 ends with Billy not feeling very well, and Xander takes her to bed and is kind of taking care of her. It's unclear how much time passes between that and Chapter 6, where she's feeling totally fine. She's working on her senior art project, trying to figure out what theme she wants to do, and Xander comes back and spicy things happen. And, like, none of that is wrong or weird, but it doesn't quite fit with the part where she wasn't feeling well at the end of the previous chapter. And there's also some tension between them at this point in the story, and that does not come through in this chapter at all. So I think I might want to add another scene to the start of the chapter to put more space between the scene where she's not feeling well and where she feels totally fine. And then I do need to work on changing the tone of the scene that's there so that there's just a little bit more tension between them. They're good, they're fine, but Billy has something really important to talk to him about, and she is working up to saying it. She has not said it yet, so there is inherently tension on her side, and it's from her perspective. So other than that, it is very tiny little tweaks. We'll see if that stays true as we go on. Obviously, there's still a lot of like details and descriptions and that type of stuff that all of these chapters are missing, but that's not what we're focusing on right now. The scene also ends with Billy bringing up potentially double majoring in not just fine arts but in graphic design, and that really feels like it comes out of nowhere. And it doesn't come out of nowhere because there's a scene a few chapters before where she talks to her advisor, and so Billy's debating and she asks Xander what he thinks of that. So it makes sense in general, but the exact moment where it comes in, it feels very jarring. It feels out of nowhere. So I need to work that in a little better to make it not feel so random, because it isn't. It isn't random. So I'm 6 chapters in now. Since there's a total of 47 chapters, I have 41 chapters left. If I keep going at this rate, it will take me like 8 days to finish this. Realistically, I know there's a lot more fluctuation than that, but this will be the main focus of my work week, so I will be very surprised if this actually does take me 8 days, but we'll see. I'm done for the day. I have to wrap some presents, and then, tomorrow is birthday time, so I probably won't get much done tomorrow. It's Monday, May 18th. Yesterday I got a decent amount of work done, considering it was also a very busy day for me. I read chapters 7 through 11 before going to bed. That got me through the first plot point, which I knew that it falls early in the story, there are 47 chapters, and chapters like 10 and 11 are the first plot point. That's not quite a quarter of the way through the book, but I do know there are at least 2 scenes that I want to add in. I kind of have my plans for the opening scene. Like, it's been gestating. I've been thinking about it for a while. A while being like 2 days. Because that's when I started rereading this. I have a pretty good idea of what I want that scene to be, so that's at least one more scene, not necessarily one more chapter that I intend to add in. And then there are a couple other places where it definitely needs some work. I realized why chapter 6 was bothering me so much. Chapter 6 was the first scene, the first chapter that I wrote completely brand new in this draft. All of the previous 5 chapters were ones that I made some small alterations to. Hi, sweetheart. So that chapter is more or less what I need to happen in it, but the tone is all wrong. It was my first time legitimately writing on this project in a while, and it definitely shows. All of the other scenes that I wrote brand new for this draft are much better, much more cohesive with the rest of the draft. This one in particular was just off. It's mostly a tone issue. There's just not enough tension between Billy and Xander when there really needs to be tension between them. Hi, I'm trying to film. I realized that last night while I was working on the following chapters. And then, yeah, I made it through the first plot point. That Thanksgiving dinner with Billy and Xander and her dad and her sister, and Jimmy is also there. That dinner is rough. It needs fleshed out so much, which I knew it did. Like, I'm sure if I look back at the footage of when I was drafting that chapter, I struggled a lot with, like, not knowing what to add in the conversation. I do have one idea of something I know I want to add in to that chapter that's, like, important character stuff, but not important to the main storyline. So I have at least one thing that can help with that issue. But mostly the whole chapter just needs really fleshed out. It is very condensed. I struggled with that scene a lot, and it really shows. And then Billy and Xander finally got together and fully talked about things. I know because of changes I already decided to make before I even started reading this draft, that a lot of that scene will need small tweaks to make it accurate. While rereading my books, I realized that I needed Xander to be the one to be like, okay, let's go visit my parents. So any scene where that kind of stuff gets brought up, I have to make some changes. It also means that when they actually do go visit them, in the draft I'm reading, Xander's parents pay for the tickets for them to go, but it honestly makes so much more sense if Billy and Xander handle that themselves, and then his parents don't even know that she's coming with him. I think that will really add to the tension that I need with his parents, that he intentionally hides it from them. Billy is aware that they don't know. That's an important thing, because they already got in a fight about him lying to his parents about her, and we don't need to add to that. But it would probably be a good thing for them to not know beforehand, so they have no time to prepare. I think generally that's for the best. The other thing is, while I was at the gym this morning, I was, for whatever reason, thinking about the way that Billy texts. I don't remember why I was thinking about this. I was just, like, on the treadmill. And then that got me thinking, like, wondering the circumstances of how Billy and Xander first exchanged phone numbers, why exactly that would happen, because Billy did not like him. She, vehemently disliked him for most of their freshman year. But by Christmas time, they have exchanged phone numbers then, because he texts her over winter break. Anyway, I was just thinking about that and started coming up with ideas, like little tidbits to include in one of the short stories from his perspective of that winter break when he first meets Jimmy's parents, and yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts and I need to make sure to write them down before I forget them. Honestly, I probably should have written them down earlier, but I went to the library after the gym and went through a whole bunch more chapters. So I'm now through chapter 18, and Billy and Xander just landed in Florida. So she has not met either of his parents yet, but she will in the next scene. I'm excited. I will say, so far, as rough as it is, the book is decent. Like, it is functioning how I want it to, aside from the few tweaks that I already know I need to make. I'm quite pleased. It's not nearly as bad as I thought it was while I was writing this part. But I also think the midpoint was probably where I struggled the most. So we'll see when I actually get there. We'll see how rough it is. I'm going to write down these notes and thoughts about this short story, and I'll work on reading more chapters later. It's going on 11 p.m. and I just finished reading through the midpoint. I have a lot of mixed feelings. I feel like generally the content is good, but all of this section needs fleshed out so much. Some of the scenes, things are just happening way too quickly, so I need to fix that. That kind of fleshing out needs to happen, but also just emotionally fleshing things out. Chapter 26 is so short, painfully short. It's 2 pages in my printed out version, and not even 2 full pages. It's really short. The content is good. What's here is good, but it does need expanded and refined and just generally improved. That's how this goes. That's how writing goes. This isn't tugging at my heartstrings like it should, and that's more an issue with the writing needs to be better for that to work. I have found a few spots here and there where I know I want to add in another scene, both as part of fleshing out the story more and as giving a pause between some big moments. I am stopping for the night. Tomorrow is my Drabble live stream, so I don't know how much of this I will get to work on, but we'll see. Oh, and I wrote 1,200 words earlier on that short story from Xander's perspective. I'm actually really happy with what I wrote there. It is really solid. I'm impressed that it came out as well as it did. I was just thinking about it all day, even while I was working on this and while I was doing video editing earlier. I was just thinking about it, so when I actually sat down to get it out, it worked quite well. I'm really happy with it. It's not done, obviously. There's definitely quite a bit more to it than what's there, but I'm very happy with it. Yeah, when I'm done with this, I definitely need to make a list of all the scenes that I know I want to add. I have all of my notes on each chapter, but they're still really loose and vague. So I think when I type up my notes after doing this read-through, I will kind of refine the notes, make a list of all the scenes I specifically want to add in, and the specific alterations I want to make. But a lot of the stuff for the next draft will just be, okay, let's rewrite this scene completely, not from scratch, but rewrite it completely so that it's just better. It just needs to be better. Okay, I am signing off for the night. Hopefully I'll get in more of this tomorrow, and if not, I'll probably be finishing this on Wednesday. At least the read-through, and then I'll have to do my notes and stuff. I am so excited to be working on the next draft. I'm anxiously excited, but gotta finish this first. just read over chapters 27 through 32. What's crazy to me is how different everything is after the midpoint. And I don't mean like story-wise, because it's supposed to be. The midpoint is a huge deal, and it affects Billy quite a bit. But these chapters, like the way this is written, is so much better after the midpoint. It's kind of jarring. And part of that's because of how rough the midpoint itself is. It's probably the roughest part of the book, but there are chapters occasionally where it's like, this is bad. I actually don't have a lot of notes for a lot of these chapters I just read. 32 I do have some notes on, because that's where one of the Dahlia scenes is, and that scene is either going to get cut entirely or be drastically changed, because it doesn't work the way it was supposed to. Like, that was a scene that was conceived before I made the huge change at the midpoint, and it doesn't work anymore. It would have worked before, maybe. Maybe not, actually, I don't know. But either that scene's getting cut entirely or it's getting toned down a lot, because it became a confrontation, and I don't really want there to be a confrontation like that. If Dahlia is going to be in this book, I don't want her role to be as an antagonist, but also just in general, the scene does not mesh well with anything else. And the scene that follows it, there's no real indication that why Billy is upset has anything to do with that. So it doesn't even like blend in with the stuff that follows. Anyway, that's like the one scene of what I just read that does not fit, that feels out of place. The rest of this is really solid. Chapter 30, I didn't even have any notes on. That's the first chapter I've had no notes on. That's crazy. To be clear, all of these chapters still need a lot of work, a lot of line editing, a lot of like fleshing out the descriptions, and not necessarily the interiority, because most of these is interiority, but there's still a lot of that like line level work that needs done on these chapters. But they're really good. I'm really happy with this part of the story, and considering how pleased I was with the story by the time I finished this draft, I'm hoping that generally stays true for the rest of the book, but we'll see. The first half is definitely rougher, and it's off balance. More time passes in the second half of the book, but that part is also shorter, and I know there are several scenes that I want to add to the beginning of the book that would then make it even more off balance. So I'm not sure how to fix that at this point, but I might find parts I want to expand in the latter half of the book too, so we'll see. I've gotten through 32 chapters out of 47, so that's only 15 chapters left. I doubt very much I will finish this today, because that's still quite a bit, but maybe tomorrow. Okay, time to completely shift gears and get ready for my live stream. Well, it is now Wednesday the 20th. I read 2 chapters before bed last night. I cried in both of them. They were just very emotional scenes with Billy and Xander comforting each other. I did a lot of screaming in the margins about how cute and soft and tender the scenes are. I hadn't really expected to cry yet. There are some scenes later on where I'm expecting to cry, but I wasn't expecting it there. I have about 100 pages left. Most of these are going to be very emotional scenes, and I know I will have a lot of notes to write down. I don't know if I'll be able to finish this today. I have lunch plans, and then I'm hanging out with my friend Sam tonight. I have to get rid of this cat now. Hopefully the lighting isn't too bad. It's kind of overcast, but every once in a while the sun comes out, so I don't know. It's fine. I finished reading this draft this morning. I think overall I cried like 4 times. I call that a win. That's definitely a win. I'm really happy with this draft. It is miles and miles better than the last draft was. For sure. This still needs so much work. I have 15 pages of notes that I was writing like chapter by chapter. And the next thing I want to do is type all of these up into a cohesive list of actionable things. Not just, hey, why is Xander checking his phone here when he wears a watch and he would look at that? But add in the way I actually want to make those changes. So it's not just that he has a watch and so he should be checking that, but how I'm going to rearrange that is Billy's going to look at his watch and Xander checks his phone because he gets a text message. Some of my notes are more vague, like this little mention of this person feels shoehorned in, and either I can cut it entirely or figure out how to make it work better. I have some decisions to make about those sort of items. And then I also have some timeline tweaking that needs to happen. While I was working on this, both this draft and the previous one, I had forgotten that the gallery show for the senior art projects needs to be like 2 weeks before graduation. So some of the parents get there at that time, but then the gallery opening isn't until like the night before graduation, and that doesn't make any sense because if it's senior projects, the seniors would then be coming to take them away before they leave. People are not there for very long after graduation most of the time. So I've got a bunch of those smaller things. I need to change stuff around. I also need to make a list of all of the scenes I know I want to add. I have a whole chapter I know I want to add in at the very end. I want to do a new opening scene, and there are several other scenes throughout that I know I want to add in. So the next step is to type all of this up into one big list that I can then reference while working on the next draft. And my next draft won't include a whole bunch of rewriting. There definitely will be some, because probably the main issue that I found in most of these was you need to flesh this out. So there will definitely be a lot of that. But so many parts of this are just things where it's like, okay, I need to rearrange a few things. I need to adjust this section. I'm still not really diving into the line edits part. I could. That could definitely be part of this, but I think I want to deal with the logistics issues that I still have first before going into proper line edits and fixing the wording and that sort of stuff. As always, thank you for hanging out with me while I work on my project. This is such a special book to me and such a special series, and it's so exciting to actually be this far in the process. It finally feels like things are actually coming together, and that makes me so happy. I'll see you guys next time.